So you're a philosopher?
Yes. 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 Yes.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Leaders of a New School. Today, we're going to talk about homeschool. Now, whether you're deciding to homeschool your child or you're already on a homeschool journey, homeschooling is fastly becoming one of the options to educating our children, with over 3 million children being homeschooled from the grades of K through 12. I homeschooled my first child up into college, where we use an actual homeschool program. This time I have 6 children that I'm all homeschooling, and I decided to be a little bit more eclectic with what of how I'm homeschooling, meaning that I'm bringing in hands-on experience with project-based learning, which is I guess that's what my background is in. And then we're doing, I do Zearn.org for math, and I'll post that website up as well. And then I have put together different things based upon me working in New York and using the New York curriculum. So I've put together a whole bunch of different things for my children, and I have a KG, 2 first graders, 2 second graders, and then I have a high schooler, which I'm preparing her for her next phase in her life. So these are the different students that I'm working with. But sometimes you may homeschool and you may have a special needs child. Instead of special needs, I like to call them gifted, because this is what I believe they are. I believe that it's a gift that they have that we have to learn about. We have to learn how to input them into, how to not implement them into our world, but more so learn how to be a part of their world and make them self-sufficient with the needs that they have. So today we're going to go ahead and we're going to discuss homeschooling and the option to homeschool and the resources that's needed, and how we should begin. So looking at the road to beginning homeschooling and looking at the options that we have. And remember, it's a choice. So this is a safe space. This is for us to get the information and learn about what's best for us. Today's guest is a homeschooler and a mom, and I think she's going to bring to us a lot of knowledge about how she was able to begin her journey, and we'll look at her schedule as well. So if you haven't already, please remember to subscribe, like, and then share, and definitely give us some comments. Let us know how in this episode, what information would you like for us to explore more? Give us comments and support for one another in the homeschool community, because we know that we need, as homeschoolers, we definitely need more support amongst ourselves so that we can feel comfortable and we can, I don't know if it's necessarily comfort, but it's a support when everyone may not think that that homeschooling is the best, or even we get overwhelmed ourselves. So anyway, stay tuned, come back. We're going to have a special guest, and we're going to get right into the nooks and crannies of homeschooling and whether or not it's a good option for us. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everyone. And as promised, we have a special guest. I know, like I said, I always say special guest, but this time I really mean it. We have a special guest. We're talking about homeschooling, and we have with us today Naya. Naya is a mother of 4, a student at GSU majoring in Africana studies. And then on top of that, she's an interdisciplinary artist. So if anyone can tell us about the chaos around homeschooling and still trying to be your own person, it would definitely be my guest now. Naya, how are you?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, very good. So can you just tell us about your journey? What made you decide to homeschool?
Well, the original intent of me homeschooling, I always wanted to homeschool. I honestly, before I was a mother, before I was a wife, I constantly researched different schooling methods, and I've always looked into the different methods of schooling, the different methods of child rearing, and I kind of always leaned towards homeschooling, but it wasn't until I had my first child, my son, that it became a reality and a real question. My son is autistic, so we had to quickly choose, what schooling methodology we were going to use with him. And no system really fit, and homeschool ended up being what worked best for us.
Ah, okay, okay. So even though you had the idea in your head that you always want to homeschool, once you saw what was going to be best for your children, that kind of like solidified the choice for you.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So,
What were you seeing? Were you yourself homeschooled?
I was not. Actually, I attended Islamic school from third grade to almost the 12th grade. I would say probably I left in 11th grade. I went to multiple different schools. Before that, I attended public school. I attended charter school. I attended the private Islamic school. I went to a high school / trade school for maybe about a year. And I did a co-op homeschool. Oh. And then I left all of those and got my GED.
Okay,
I have a little bit of experience in every school.
So you have experience. You have educational experience.
Yes, because for me, nothing really fit even as a kid. No school really fit perfectly. And so that also kind of gave me a lot of insights to what may be right for my children, because for me, no school really fit 100%.
Okay. Okay. And this is because of of his autism.
Yeah, for my son, it's because of his autism. And then with the rest of the children, it just made more sense to continue homeschooling than to just put them in school. Okay? Because again, for us right now, and not saying it's forever, but right now, no school really fits the needs for our family that we needed to.
Okay. Okay. Now, how do you deal with being your own person, having your own life? And did I hear you're married as well?
Yes.
So, so you're juggling being married, doing your own career, and homeschooling 4 children or 3 children.
Yeah.
How? Tell me, how does this happen?
Time. It takes a lot of time. As you can see, there's one for me right now.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of I would say delegating and prioritizing. I have had to set the priority of like, I'm gonna go to school, I'm gonna finish school, and I have to make the time for that and figure out, okay, my husband's schedule is this, my schedule is this, so where are the kids gonna be? What is the baby gonna be doing? Where are the kids? Is there activity they can be in? Should my husband be off? But just making that a priority and making that time a priority, because no one else is going to do it for you. We pretty much, as a family, it's just my husband, myself, and my kids. We don't live near any of our family, his family or mine. So for us, we have no other choice but to make the time and slot the time off for whatever it is that we need, whether it's personal time or school or work, and just make it happen.
Wow. Wow. Yes. Now, it's interesting because what the one of the complaints about homeschooling is trying to learn how to organize your life in a way that will be conducive to schooling, because you'll have the naysayers, the ones who do not, whose opponents against homeschooling. That's one of the things they want to bring out, that the students, that your children will not know how to formally sit down when they're supposed to sit down, or they won't know how to interact or socialize, or they won't know the social norms, because people put in their heads that homeschooling means basically teaching when you want to teach, doing what you want to do. But it's actually much more than that if you want to be efficient.
Yeah, I think that, the first thing I would challenge to that is what is our norm? And is our norm something worth maintaining? Because we have to understand the Western school system, at least, the entire purpose of it is to train the worker. And if you want your child to be able to go into a workforce, then they may need those skills. But if that's not the lifestyle that they're going to live, those skills may not even be necessary for them. The skill of being able to sit down in a classroom may not be necessary for somebody who wants to work in a construction zone, or somebody who wants to do something like me, interdisciplinary art, where that's not required. I don't see often. If somebody wants to be a homemaker, they may need different skills. And I think the whole thing is that we have to first of all question the norm that we want to maintain.
Yes.
So
Yes. And that's true, because normally that's what it is. It's trying to break out of the system that the systematic box that we've gotten put in to think of what is education, what is the right education for our children. And that's the thing that we have to break out of that. I call it the group mind type of thought. It's like being that sheepish thought, that sheepish thinking, where we're all thinking as one way.
yeah, I just, for me, with having a child that has autism who doesn't conform to norms already, for me, the idea of conforming to those norms of what school is supposed to look like really means nothing, because my child can't conform to those things. He has trouble with things like behavior, like sitting down in the classroom and things like that. It has not affected his ability to learn, but it means that he would have never been able to conform to that system in the first place. My child is twice exceptional. So he learned things beyond his grade level in unconventional ways.
Wow. That's something else that we bring up. In the school system, you'll find that we're quick to diagnose children and say, okay, this, and for me, I was a special education teacher in the Bronx, and I had autistic children inside my classroom, and I was still expected to give them the exact same curriculum and get them ready for the exact same standardized testing. You know, even though they did label him autistic and they gave some type of derivations of how he's supposed to be taught, it's still the exact same curriculum. So at least when you're homeschooling, you have that control and you can teach in a way where your children are more receptive to the information and they can grow at the speed that they are able to do. Because what happens in school, we say, okay, he's autistic, we're going to slow him down. But really, he doesn't slow down at all. Even a person with ADHD, just because he has ADHD doesn't necessarily mean, and I don't want my viewers to think I'm anti-medicine, but it doesn't mean that I have to medicate that child so that they can sit down. It means that I might have to think of another way to teach instead of sitting in a chair for 8 hours.
Absolutely. And for me, that's what we ran into immediately upon him getting his diagnosis, because he was diagnosed very early. And the very first thing, even in therapy, that they would focus on was he needs to be able to write. He needs to be able to hold a pencil in this particular way. He needs to be able to sit down in the classroom and follow directions and raise his hand and do this. And I'm like, okay, what about life skills? We're jumping straight to, let's be able to make sure he can conform in a classroom setting and not really focus on what he needs in the moment. It's the things to be able to regulate his emotions, because that's where his autism shows up more, is in emotional regulation. Educational wise, he didn't need to be in a classroom. My son, he taught himself to read before he could speak, because he was nonverbal until 2, but he was already reading. He was able to identify all his shapes, all of his colors. He taught himself the Russian alphabet, the Arabic alphabet. He, even now at 8 years old, he just learned the entirety memorized, including the atomic number, the periodic table, for fun. This is the things that
And
my son
how old
does.
is he?
He's 8 years old.
Wow.
So a normal classroom wouldn't have worked for him because even when we were taking him to the schools, which in the United States, a lot of people don't even know that the schools, regardless of whether or not you homeschool or not, are required to provide your child with services if they have a diagnosis. A lot of people don't know that. So even when we were taking him to the schools, we would have this conflict because they didn't know where to put him. Because academically, he's on one level, but behaviorally, he's on another level.
Ah, okay.
And so we would run into this issue all the time where it's just like, okay, well, academically, he's exceeding his level. He's in middle school, high school level academically, but behaviorally, emotionally, he's not on that level.
Mhm, mhm,
And
mhm.
it became a conflict of, well, will the teachers be able to deal with him in the classroom? And I'm like, if he gets bored in this classroom, the behavior is not going to get better.
Right,
You guys
right.
have to be able to capture his attention. And at his grade level, you're not going to be able to do that, but he's not prepared to be in a higher grade level. And with a lot of, in the school system that we're in, which we're in Georgia, they just didn't have the tools that they needed to help my son. So I had to help him.
Yes. So let's talk about this. So you have the decision now to homeschool. What is next? What do you have to do? And you say you're in the state of Georgia. Are they home for, in Georgia? Are they homeschool friendly? Do you still have to report and do tests?
I would say Georgia is homeschool friendly to a point because of the nature, and not to get into politics, but because of the nature of the Republican state, they very much so prioritize the parents' choice in Georgia. So you sign a form with a declaration to intent to homeschool. You submit it every year, I believe, from the time the child starts in third grade, and then at that point you continue. I believe it's not until fifth grade that they have to start taking state testing, but that's it. There's no other reporting. There's no other turning in schoolwork or proof that you're homeschooling. Anything beyond that for the state of Georgia.
Okay. And what are you using a curriculum, or are you creating your own curriculum? Is it like basically organic as it comes along, or you have something that you paid for that you're actually following along?
So for math, I follow curriculum. I do use what is it called? I can never remember what it's called. Singapore math. So we
Ah,
use Singapore math for him, and for everything else, it's just going along. We do kind of like an eclectic mix of styles. When he was younger, I did a lot more of the Montessori style, but we needed a bit more structure and direct instruction in some places. And I want to make sure, because I do have a child that is extremely gifted. For me, in my experience, I feel that gifted children often kind of get overlooked in some ways, in that the
yes.
assumption is that they know things that they may not know because they're gifted in one area. So for me, it's very important that I fill in the blanks with him. So he can do high levels of math, but I still had him do grade level math because the way his brain works, he skips steps. So I had to make sure that he gets the basics and understands the basics. So when he encounters a new problem, he knows how to do that because he didn't miss out from the basics. A lot of people would have just allowed him to skip those steps because on paper, he can do all of it. But when I realized there were blanks here in different spaces in basic math, we had to go back. And in homeschool, I can do that. In homeschool, I can sit down and go over those things and go back as much as you need to in a way that a classroom setting may not allow him to do because they want to move on to the next thing.
Yes, yes. One thing I'm noticing while I'm speaking to you, and I'm loving it, because as an educator, I've come across the spectrum of mothers. I've come across the mothers where they're very intuitive. They know their children. They know the needs of their children, and they can become advocates. They're advocates for their parents, their children. And then I have the mothers who they don't know anything about their children. They're just going along with the flow. And they're relying on the teachers to kind of like tell them, so they can't be good advocates because they don't know their children. With you, I'm seeing that you're on the higher spectrum. You're very intuitive. You know the needs. You are, you seem to be very clear on what the goal is for your child. And I think that that's what's important when it comes to homeschooling. Not that you just, okay, I want to homeschool my children, I don't like the system, but that you actually have a plan of action. This is like you just said, I know that he can handle the high math, but he has these holes that I want him to fill first. I know that he needs more structure, so I'm going to give him a little bit of structure. So you really know the needs of your child. I'm thinking that probably makes a big difference when homeschooling. Would you agree?
I think so. And for me personally, whether I'm homeschooling or not, first, homeschooling is not an end all be all for me. If it becomes a situation where I have to put my children into school, I will still have to supplement their education regardless of what school they go to. So that's something that I put first and foremost. Homeschooling may not be forever. I myself have, upon becoming a mother, became disabled. My husband has become disabled at different points. So we understand that this may not be a forever situation for us. Homeschooling, alhamdulillah, is a blessing that we're able to do it right now, but that may not be a forever situation for us, especially looking at the context of everything that's going on in the world, the fact that living in America is just very difficult to have a one income household. So that may not be a forever situation for us. So I want to make sure my child is prepared. But at the end of the day, in parenting, the entire purpose of being a parent is that you're preparing your person to become an adult that is able to handle themselves independently. That doesn't mean that, my children have to leave the house right away, but they need to be able to function in the real world. And as Muslims, they also need to be able to function in the dunya and have you can't build on top of a shaky foundation. So for me, the big thing is building a strong foundation in all of the subjects, whether that be a secular subject, whether that be an Islamic subject. The foundation is the most important part. Everything else can build on top of that. So that's my focus when it comes to homeschooling.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Now I do want to ask you, because you stated that this may not be a forever thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The next thing that opponents of homeschooling will criticize is that the student is not ready for the standardized testing that has to take place, and that that we don't prepare them for college level, for those who's going to college level. What do you say to that? And even in Georgia, you said that in 5th grade they have to start they start testing. If we look at like your 8-year-old, how are you preparing him for testing? How are you preparing the other children so that when 5th grade comes, they will be able to sit and they will be able to understand and they'll be able to do well in testing? It's a shame that we have to do the standardized testing, but this is one of the things that in a lot of states you can't get away from.
For me, I don't prepare them for the testing. And I know that's probably going to be very controversial, but again, for me, I look at the system and the system of standardized testing and the purpose of it. And for me, that's just not something that I put a high level of import in. Because for us, I understand what the testing is for. I understand that the testing is for the schools to get funding and things like that. Mm-hmm. It is not actually something that is a benefit for my child. It's something that's a benefit to the state, to the school, to how many funds they bring in, the levels of the children in math and things like that. I took standardized testing. For me, I always did excellent on standardized testing. Did I always understand what was on the test? No, but I'm very good at recognizing patterns. The standardized testing for me, it doesn't mean anything to their intelligence level. It's just what they need to report to the state.
Yeah.
So I don't put that at a high level of focus. for my children. If they pass the standard test, they pass it. If they don't, they don't. There are schools that don't do SAT scores. There are other factors that they look at outside of ATT, SAT. The flex scores and things like that, once they hit adulthood, don't even matter.
Mhm.
So for me, that's I don't teach. The benefit of being a homeschooler is that I don't have to teach school tests, and I don't.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
It's
Do
just
you
not a
have
priority.
Do you have a support system? I know you said you're kind of isolated without family, but how do you connect so that the children can get the social balance that's needed?
We're in community. We have friends. I have friends. My friends have children. We go to, eat parties. We go to Jumwa. They are in community. We have memberships to museums, the library. We have memberships to aquariums and zoos. And my children get to interact with all types of children and all types of adults. So, the argument of socialization, I think as a kid for myself, socialization was the hardest thing for me in school because I was locked in with a group of children. And if you didn't find your friends or your peers among those children, that's all you had. If you didn't do any other activities or anything like that, you were stuck with whoever was in your classroom. And there comes with cliques and, personalities and things like that. And while you do have to learn how to get along with personalities that you don't agree with and things like that, I think it's a lot easier when you have a wide net of people to interact with versus this small amount of people that you have to interact with in a traditional classroom setting. So my children are gonna get socialization. Right now we're in Kentucky. My children just they went to a history museum in Kentucky. They were talking to strangers. They were asking questions. On Earth Day, we went to the community center and they were talking to some woodworkers who were building birdhouses for the Georgia Forest Alliance. And they were interacting with my daughter's a Girl Scout. She saw another Girl Scout troop. She went over there, introduced herself. She planted flowers with them. They socialized. They get amazing levels of socialization that they wouldn't get if they were sitting in the classroom all day. And especially if they were stuck in the classroom with just their age level peers all day. And sometimes that's an issue within itself. So I think I lost you. I can't hear you. Are we still here?
I think my microphone died. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I was ready to say it actually seems like they get a more well-rounded. It's not just academics, but they actually get a well-rounded social life as well, where they're able to step outside of again that small box, and they can meet people from different places and doing different things and different ages and everything like that. That was one of the things that I wanted for my daughters when we because I worked internationally, and I see that it made such a big difference that they were able to see the world past their neighborhood. They were able to meet people from all different races doing all types of different things. It expanded them so much, where before it would not have done that. So I can definitely see the benefit in that. Tell me about your schedule. I'm going to put your schedule up for everyone to see, but I was so amazed with the schedule because it kind of seemed eclectic. It wasn't, it didn't, and I love that about the schedule. It wasn't a regimen. Like your children aren't in military school. It's actually very organic the way that the schedule appears. So tell me how you put the schedule together.
So my schedule actually has existed since I was a child. Again, I always had a special interest in like pedagogy and learning modules and things like that. And I always had a dream of starting a school. And if I had a school, this would have been my ideal schedule. Why I do have a school now? It's only my children, and I always wanted to have the Islamic art and the things that the Prophet had told and someone has always encouraged us towards, and have our section and anything like that. But my schedule, I didn't put like, oh, we're doing this at this time, or we're going to do that, because this is an everyday thing. So my methodology, my, you know, plan for my homeschool is that every day they're learning something that gets them closer to the school. And the idea is to be a well-rounded individual who can function in the world, again, both as a Muslim and in the secular world. And I feel like this is the best way for me.
Right.
It's not necessarily something that's regimented. Some of these things may not come right now, but they're all things that, those are my end goals that we're working towards. So when I put those things in there, like when I say college readiness is not necessarily going to look like I'm sitting in a classroom setting the entire time. Sometimes that's something like being able to manage your time. That's more important as a college student than necessarily knowing how to sit down in a classroom and take notes. It's being able to manage your time, because once you're an adult and you're in college, your parents are not doing that for you anymore. Your school schedule is not doing that for you anymore. You need to be able to know what time you have to go to class, make sure that you're getting there, make sure you have what you need, and you have to be able to do that on your own. So when I say college readiness, that's not always pointing to what people always think about. Okay, you have this grade, you pass this test, you take these prerequisites, because that's not all that college readiness is. Right. As somebody who has had my own untraditional college experience, I know the things that I needed, and they weren't always academic. 9 times out of 10, they weren't academic. Right. Sometimes college is just being able to speak to people. A lot of the purpose of college is being able to, you know, what do you call it? I'm always struggling to find the word, but what is it? Being able to socialize and being able to I'm losing my word.
It's okay. It's okay.
But being able to just be able to connect with people and make those connections to find jobs and things like that. And that's a large portion of what college is about. Less so than the academics. The academics are important, but if you graduate with a C or you graduate with an A, you still graduated. Yeah. But if you make the necessary connections with people, that's what actually gets you into the job. So, you know, I have my own college experience to inform how I am preparing my children for if they decide to do that. And if they decide not to do that, my husband has experience with trade work. If they decide to go that route, you know, we both have at different times run our own businesses. If they decide to go that route, I want them to have the tools. I want them to be able to have the tools and the self-determination to do those things.
Wow. Mashallah, that's very good. If our viewers are watching this and they want to know, like, what's the top 3 things they need for themselves, not even for the children, but what are the top 3 things that you would say is needed if they decide to go the route of homeschooling?
The top 3 things that I believe are needed to be a homeschooler is, number 1, flexibility. You need to be able to be flexible. You need to be able to look at whatever you're doing and say, hey, if this doesn't work for us anymore, how are we going to switch gears? If what we're doing in our homeschool, I'm not even talking about homeschooling in general, but just if what we're doing in our homeschool is not working for us anymore, are we okay with switching gears? You need to be able to remove your ego. Because I think a lot of parents, when they become homeschoolers, the ego of wanting to do it a certain way, and necessarily be able to tell other people we did it this way, gets in the way of sometimes what your children need. If what your children need doesn't align with what your goals are, you have to change. You have to be able to change it. And then next thing I would say is the next thing I think you need to be a homeschooler is a lot of patience, and, you know, some children will come in easier like I said, I have a child that has is very exceptional. I have another child that struggles. He struggled a lot with reading. So one child I never had to read. So now I have to come in with different age with my other child, which is something that we both love. We're now learning how to teach an entirely different child. And
Right.
people realize that they think when they have their children, especially their middle program homeschooling, that it's going to be the same situation for each child. It's not. Each child, when you're doing an individualized education, especially in different levels, that really means individual. Every
Yes.
child is not going to, you know, have the same needs or need the same type of instruction. My children have very different needs, and I have to have the patience to deal with that. I think the third thing would be you need the love. I think that for me, homeschooling, a lot of it comes from the love of just want to be with my children.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
You have to be okay with the fact that you're going to be with your children a lot. There is outsourcing. I'm also just not outsourcing. Like I said, they're in classrooms, they do things like that. But a lot of that comes down to you. And if you're not gonna love it all the time. Sometimes it is work. You're playing the role of the teacher and the mother at the same time. But if you don't love it, it's gonna be a lot harder to do. Children are children. Children are
Yes.
children.
Yes.
At the end of the day.
That you know what, you hit something for me, because one thing that we have to remember, and probably more so when we're with our children 24/7, is to have that self-care and know when to say, okay, you know what, today I need a break. Today we're going to do something that is totally independent, because I have to back off. So you have to be able to, I think a lot of mothers, they become guilty. They start feeling guilty. You know, if my child isn't reading right now, or they're not getting this particular thing, it must be because of me, you know, or they become so frustrated that they get that on the children. So it's really important that when we're talking about love, like you said, you have to be able to love being around your children, love the idea of homeschooling, and then love yourself enough to know when you need to just stop.
Yeah.
And take that break before you go too far. Because one of my fears as a teacher, one of the fears that I always had with my parents when they decided they want to help with math, is that they traumatized the child. I had so many students that were traumatized about math because of their parents yelling at them and forcing the concept on them, you know? So I always used to tell them, look, if you can't do it, let me handle it, because I can handle it, you know? And if you need to back away, you know, before you cause the adverse effect that you're not trying to cause, you know? So I love that you said patience. So we said patience is needed. Love is needed. Flexibility is needed. And we need to put our ego aside.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I had another guest on beforehand when we were speaking about education reform on another time. And one thing that guest stated is that you need to utilize your community. If you're not good in something and someone else may be good in something, ask them, hey, how do you do this? How can I implement this? Or can you show my child this? I love the fact that you said that your children were going to the museum, they were talking to people who were doing woodwork, because it puts it off of you for that little while and give them someone else that's expert in the field, you know? So kudos. That's really good advice. Really good advice. I want to ask you one other thing, just because there may be other mothers that's watching this, and they may have the question about, is my child gifted? How can I know every child is different, and there's going to be different cues for every child is different with different cues. But what is it? Did you notice that your child was gifted before he was diagnosed? Was there something that let you know, okay, you know what? Let me advocate this.
Yeah. Well, I think both with the autism and the giftedness is something that I noticed way before I ever got into a doctor's office. I just picked up on the fact that with the autism, I picked up on the fact that my son wasn't responding to cues. But these are things that, again, because I've been studying as a hobby, studying pedagogy and things like that since I was a child, I was a little bit more in tune with. And also finding out, and this is an aside, that I am also on the spectrum and finding that out as an adult. So it just was something that I already had notice of. And as far as noticing he was gifted, again, like I said, he couldn't speak until he was 2. He was nonverbal, but I realized that he had kind of made up his own sign language. It wasn't real sign language, but he was communicating to us through this sign language that he had made up, spelling things out with his hand. And then I noticed one day I was sitting with him, and this again was before he could speak. He wasn't even 2 yet, and it sounded as though he was saying the words in a little picture book that he was looking at. So I took the book and I just started writing the words on the board, and he was reading. I was like, oh, he can read. And from there, we just kept discovering more. I was going, he had a tablet. I know a lot of people are anti-screen, but for us, as an autism family, before he was verbal, it was just like, this is one of the best tools we could use. We were even trying to teach him the AAC. So he had access to that. And through that, he would get on there, he would draw. And I'm like, these drawings don't look like normal drawings. Oh, that's the Russian alphabet. Okay, fantastic. So a lot of what my son has just been, we discover things, or we'll go to teach him things and discover he already knows it.
Wow.
We don't need to teach him this. Okay, well, let's go and
where was he learning it? Was it that he's able to see it and then just know it?
Yeah, essentially, like even now, like he will sit and out of his own pure joy will draw out the entire periodic table. Each person that he meets gets assigned a periodic element. So I'm calcium, my other daughter's copper, my other child is uranium. We each get assigned one. If you ask him where it is on the table, what its symbol is, what things are made from it, what's the atomic number, he just knows it. This is something that brings joy to him. This is something that he does. He does the same thing with the planets. He knew all of the planets. Then he started going out to different stars, different planets, Betelgeuse, and all these different stars and their size in comparison to the other ones. And he'll sit on the computer and literally create digital models of all of these things.
Wow.
So this is just something that he does that we discovered. And once we got him evaluated, I think he was like 1 point short of being considered a genius when he was evaluated at 3. But before he was evaluated, we already knew. It was just something that we picked up in observation. And honestly, if we didn't observe him, we wouldn't have known it. I don't think we would have known it if we hadn't been actively trying to teach him and finding out that he knew everything we were trying to teach him.
Because the school would have dulled that down. If he was in school, that would have been dulled down. He would have lost it. He would have lost it.
And that was the biggest thing for me, again, because I had so many different educational experiences as a child myself, and a lot of them were not positive. For me, it's very important that I don't allow someone else to dull my child's life. And I felt like putting him in school would do that, because while there are lovely teachers who will be supported and things like that, not every teacher is like that.
Yeah.
And I have to be the person that makes sure I protect my child's love of learning.
Yes. Is there I'm gonna let you go because I know that he probably wants to nurse again, and it's
all of the children are asking for me right now.
But is there any resources or websites off the top of your head that you think would be helpful for homeschoolers, and I can list them at the end of under this podcast?
I can definitely provide a few afterwards, but I think a lot of parents would actually, it would be good for them to just go on their state's website and see what the expectation of their child is. on the educational website and finding out what are their expectations. A lot of a lot that we work with is not so much as websites, but we do a lot of apps. We are very much so a tech support family. One that I love for is like Islamic studies is the Mirage Studios app. They have some beautiful resources for Islamic studies. Um, there's a company called TinyBot who makes a lot of like educational apps, like science wise, about the human body, about space and things like that, that I think are fantastic. But I think I can't give a real recommendation about you should go to this website or this website, because for me, a lot of it has been very eclectic. A lot of it has been, you know, finding things that fit our needs as we go along. I think a lot of parents would do really well on going like these parenting websites for like, you know, if you go to a doctor's office, you get the magazine that says parenting parenting, because there's so many things going on in the community that children could benefit from, and you could outsource education. But I feel like you just have to look for them. It's a lot of just looking for the things in community, because you just have to outsource sometimes as a parent. And it's okay. Even if you're not outsourcing the school system, everywhere has programs. Everywhere. Find what your children need and link them up with somebody who can do that for them. Homeschooling doesn't mean you fight.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to tell you, I am not easily impressed, but I am completely impressed by you, especially because I don't want to tell my age. I try not to tell my age, but I remember you when you were young. I remember you when you were little. And just to see the beauty and the intelligence that you are exerting from yourself, it's just beautiful to see. You really, it's been, you're actually inspiring me right now, because I'm homeschooling 5 of my own right now, so you're really inspiring me, because I'll have teacher burnout, even though I'm not a teacher right now. I'm still having teacher burnout. It's called parent burnout.
But you're a teacher, you're homeschooling, you're a teacher as well. So you got double the burnout that a regular person would have.
Yes. So I thank you so much. I think that our audience will really benefit from everything that you said, and your schedule will be posted so everyone can see a sample schedule that you don't have to follow. Remember, you don't have to follow. Like you said, you have to try to figure out what fits for your child. But at least you can look at the sample that Naya has, and you can see if it works out for you. Naya, thank you so much for sitting with me. Thank you so much. And I hope that I can speak with you soon.
Okay, inshallah.
Okay. Have a good day, inshallah. Thank you.
That's very good.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. And I want to just take this time to thank my audience for sitting with us and being with us. Remember, homeschooling it's not, what do I want to say? It's a choice. And it's a choice that you have. It's a power that you have. And it's so that you can give your child the education you believe your child needs, not based upon society, but based upon how you feel. And with that, I want to say, if you're thinking about homeschooling, go ahead, educate yourself. Go to your state's website, see what is required, talk to other homeschoolers, get on homeschooling groups, look for people that are doing what you would like to do, the goal and the path that you would like to do, and talk to them and ask them, and take it slow. Take it slow. Pray on it, think on it, and act on it. Anyway, until then, thank you for joining. Please don't forget to hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the share button, and turn on your notifications so that you'll know when the next episode is coming. Thank you once again for joining us at Leaders of a New School. Have a good day.
So you're a philosopher?
Yes. 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 Yes.